I'm too old to be doing this kind of stuff. I believe in age limits. The mayor position was non-paid. All of the councilors, non-paid. No money involved. And I've always said, because of that, that's the purest form of government. I had a vision of what needed to be done and what could be done, and we're seeing the fruits of that labor now. Now, we did have an incident where the tail end of, before I retired, where my garage door was tagged by somebody who was in opposition of this growth.
Welcome back to the Black Oregon POV podcast. I'm your host, Bruce Poinsett, and this is the show where I ask the big questions and explore the big ideas about Black life in Oregon with a special guest. Today's episode is part of a special series on Black mayors in Oregon. As I record this, I'm working on a story for Street Roots where I interview 5 current and former Black mayors. In total, Oregon has had 9 Black mayors who have represented Manzanita, Sheniko, Depot Bay, King City, River Grove, Albany, Gresham, Garibaldi, and Oregon City. This episode features my interview with former King City Mayor Ken Gibson. Gibson was first appointed to the City Council of King City in 2008. He served off and on before being appointed mayor in 2016. He resigned with a year left on his term in 2021. Gibson still resides in King City. So, first off, how would you describe King City? And when you were serving, what was the most important, or what were some of the most important issues facing your constituents?
Well, when I started, keep in mind, I started as a city councilor in 2008. And the age of King City at that time is important to note, because almost all of the councilors were from old King City, the 55 and older. Okay, they were all old retired folks, and even though I was retired, I was the youngest on the council, even being a 59, 60-year-old retiree. And it was a comfortable, very comfortable community. It was a community that really was only focused on, and the council and the city manager and the mayor were only focused on just doing the day-to-day stuff. Making sure that the streets were repaired, making sure that the budget was on point, and dealing with requests that came in from time to time about maybe this tree needed to be cut down or this pothole was a nuisance, and those kinds of things. It was very, very, I would think you would kind of describe it as a typical little small town with very few issues and very little vision of what the future might look like. That's kind of the way it was. And I was welcomed with open arms. I never had any issue about and conversation much about me being a Black man on the council. And as we progressed through the years, we did have another Black counselor join us. That's Smart Ocholi, who served for a few years up until this recall occurred, in the last few years. That's a different story. But it was very, very comfortable, and it just was something that I felt comfortable doing and felt part of this community from day one. During that time period, when I first joined in 2008, we saw an increase in diversity in King City as well, in terms of the residents, in terms of the population. We saw a lot more diversity coming. I say a lot more. I think we were at maybe 1.7% in terms of the diverse population, and it kind of grew to maybe 7%, over a 5-6 year period. And I can't say that I had anything to do with that, but it was just the trend that we saw going on in this metro area in Washington County and it was probably a good time for me to be involved. And but we saw those kinds of things happening, and it was comfortable and rewarding. And you know, the one thing that I've always said is that, and keep in mind, these are all volunteer positions. The mayor position was non-paid. All of the counselors non-paid, no money involved. And I've always said, because of that, that's the purest form of government, because there is no money involved. You're not in anybody's pocket, and nobody is in your pocket, so to speak. You know, understand what I'm saying? So it was just a matter of focusing on the things that needed to be done to make the community the best it could be, make it safe, and make it well maintained. And that was kind of our mantra, and that's what we were doing for those years building up to the time that I became mayor. Now, there's a story that needs to be told, because when I became mayor in 2016, when I was appointed mayor, we had an opportunity to grow King City, you know, to go before Metro and put in a request to develop our urban growth boundaries and double the size of King City. And it was a lot of work that went into that. And it was me as mayor and our city manager, Mike Weston. We worked tirelessly to get that approval done, and we were successful. And we see new homes being built out the outer edge of King City, out near Roy Rogers, off of Beef Bend now, where that development is in fact happening. And when I say the way the counselors functioned to begin with, they didn't have a real vision for what the future might look like. It was just day to day. But I had a vision of what needed to be done and what could be done, and we're seeing the fruits of that labor now. So I kind of fast forward to that point. But you know, it was always well received, and the community received me well. I mean, I ran for counselor a couple of times and won, and never had any issue with any pushback on anything that I was doing, until you have some people who say, we don't want to see growth. That's when you started seeing a little more uprising, not necessarily from our immediate community, but there's some outlying unincorporated areas that would be impacted by a growth, and they were in opposition to it. So there was a lot of that going on at the tail end of my last term when I retired.
Just kind of get a little bit more into that pushback. Like, is that people coming to council meetings? I guess like what did it look like?
Well, what it looked like was the worst of social media. That's what it looked like. Okay? Because I realized early on that it's almost impossible to battle social media, especially when truths aren't being told, when people are making comments about the negative side of things that aren't even true. And then people read it and they want to believe it. And, you know, it's almost impossible to fight that battle. That's one of the things that I saw going on at the tail end. And I'll give you an example. One of the things that needed to be done was a road extension from existing King City all the way out through to the new development. Now, this is maybe a little bit convoluted, but there's an unincorporated area outside of King City to the west of us, where this new development and those people are selling their land in order to take advantage of this opportunity to grow generational wealth by selling their land out there that's going to be developed. There was one group of people who did not want to see any change and to their little environment over there. They're not part of King City, they're part of Washington County and unincorporated. They orchestrated a lot of the nonsense about a thoroughfare coming through, and it was going to create a whole lot more uh, traffic and vandalism and all kinds of nonsense that social media can do. That's where the pushback came from. And um, even though I didn't feel it much before I retired in 21, had nothing to do with me retiring in 21, the next group of counselors really got the brunt of what these folks were doing to try to stop the growth of that new development, to really put a squash to that. And if we look around all over Oregon and different places, we see that's a growing trend where residents who don't want to see change, who don't want to see growth, really put a lot of energy into trying to stall the process. And that's what that was really all about. That's kind of the way that developed. And but I never really felt that we were doing anything but the right thing for the future of King City. Now, we did have an incident where at the tail end of uh, before I retired, where my garage door was tagged by somebody who was in opposition of this growth. They wrote no Fisher Road extension or something, tagged my garage. That was maybe um, in 20 or the end of 19 or something like that. And that was after we had gotten approval in 18 to do the expansion. So, but that was the only incident that I ever had to deal with. And most of our neighbors were up in arms and disgusted by it. Some asked, was it racially motivated? And I had no reason to believe that, you know, and the fact that I just happened to be the black mayor and that my garage door got tagged by some person who was dissatisfied with the process that was going on.
So I imagine it's a little bit unsettling.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt, you know, and I take great pride in my property. And yeah, it pissed me off. And, you know, it's the kind of thing that you say, you know, you can't attack my family and you can't attack my property, you know, because you don't agree with a decision that's been made that's going to benefit the future of King City. So, but, you know, that's the tail end. Before I retired, we started to see more and more of what politics in this country has become. The politics in this country and what social media does in order to get their point across, even when it isn't true, and trying to fight that battle through social media. That's where we have become as a country.
And would you say that period and that specific pushback was your biggest challenge of your tenure?
Yeah, it had to be because we were doing so much. We were doing something that had never been done before. It was a big news story. It was something that got a lot of attention, you know, from other mayors. You know, I had mayors tell me, we wish we had the opportunity that you guys have because most cities today, and Lake Oswego and many other cities, you do infill because you don't have the land to expand that way. Beaverton has had that opportunity. Hillsborough has had that opportunity. King City has that opportunity because we have land to grow. Most cities, Portland, Lake Oswego, and Gresham, you do infill. because you don't have a bunch of open land where you can do a brand new development to expand your city. So King City was unique that way, and we got approved at the same time as Beaverton. If you drive out Shoals Ferry and you go out west on Shoals Ferry, you'll see all those new homes being built in Beaverton, Cooper Mountain, and in that location. Those homes were, that development was approved about the same time as we got approved in King City.
So that's on the flip side then. What would you say is your proudest accomplishment of your tenure?
That has to be at the top of the list. I mean, because, when I drive out there, I see, you know, let me say it this way. When I think about accomplishments, it has to be visible. It has to be something I can drive around the city and I can see the things that we did to benefit the city. I can go to the park. We live directly across from our community park. We redid the entire playing field in the community park. Before we had it redone, it was a marsh out there. You could not use it during the winter. We had that whole field redone. Now you have softball out there, you have soccer being played, you have the tennis courts year round. That's visible progress that happened while I was mayor. We redid one of our main streets, 131st, where we put in a center aisle, crosswalks at every intersection, and a safety light at Deer Creek Elementary so that when kids are crossing the street, you can push the button and stop traffic from flowing. That's visible progress. So that's what I strive to do, was to make sure that where the tax dollars were going, what we were doing as a council and as a city manager, that it was visible to this community. And I still see the fruits of that labor. That's what made it worthwhile. And you can't be in a position like mayor or city councilor or whatever without having some folks that are going to be dissatisfied. But, as long as you know what you're doing is providing benefit to the community, and you can see that, and the community can see it, that's what makes it worthwhile. So there are a lot of things that I can walk around. When I walk my little doggy, I can see the things that we accomplished. Now, you say, why do you do it? Do you do it for accolades? No, because I tell you what, most people don't even know I was ever mayor. I can walk around this community, people don't know who I am. And the way people are distracted, and the way people are uninvolved and don't really want to be involved in politics for a lot of reasons, and we understand it. They're because of, I have all these family things. I hate what's going on politically in this country. And they detach themselves from what is going on. You can see it in how they vote or don't vote at all, because they just don't want to be involved that way or don't have the desire or the time. So I mean, it's very rare that someone will say, "Hey, weren't you the mayor of King City?" It just doesn't happen. I haven't had one single person who really clearly understand what we did to grow King City. They don't understand the process. They don't understand what it takes or what it took to get that done, how much work and how much energy it took to make that happen. And King City is going to eventually grow over the next 20 years from 5,000 to 10,000 with retail space and places to eat and shop out there because of that work that we did, starting in 2016, all the way up through the time I was gone.
Yeah, piggybacking off of that, just people not really being involved in the process. One of the things, recurring themes, I guess, in just talking to first electeds of color and basically all throughout the state is kind of a
Mm-hmm.
sense of going from a lot of support during either like campaign, election, even the appointment process,
Mm-hmm.
but then kind of a sense of isolation once the governing really begins. Do you
Yeah,
you feel like that was the case with your tenure?
but the isolation meaning isolation from what?
Yeah, so I guess like not really like feeling that same sense of support once like, basically things are started. Once, I think the cliche I've kind of heard over again is that the only people who show up to city council meetings are people who are angry about something.
That's true. That is a true statement. That is a true statement. And the only way I can explain that, I don't think it has really much to do with who is in position, who the leaders are. I think it's the nature of people today. I just think people are so, and I can't describe it any other way than said that they're not involved. They don't know what's going on. People rarely showed up to a city council meeting. I mean, it just didn't happen. And exactly what you said. If I have an issue and I want to be heard, I might show up. But most people don't get involved. They just and I've said this time in King City, we have maybe 17 different homeowners associations. In Old King City, Art Development, which is Edgewater on the Tualatin, has its own HOA, and there are just a multitude of HOAs within the King city limits. There are a whole bunch of people that don't know the difference between the HOA and the city, what the city does versus what the HOA does. And I'm not saying that I'm not exaggerating. I've had that kind of conversation with people many times. So I think it is fairly common that people don't even understand what city government does versus what an HOA does, who does what, and it's sad to me. And there's just a whole lot of ignorance when it comes to who does what and why are you doing what you do. And it's sad to me.
Yeah, kind of shifting in that piece. Um, part of just how this story kind of came together is really like first with Mayor McGriff in Oregon City.
Right.
And one of the things I'm just curious about, like, off before we started recording, we're just kind of, you put me on to, I actually have my count of black mayors. I was missing one. So
Right.
I'm curious as far as the just like the connection between, when there's only been 9 black mayors in Oregon,
Mm-hmm.
to my knowledge, total. Like it's kind of like this it's almost like this like small little family, it almost seems like. But can you just talk about, yeah, I guess like the connection between, like, do you talk with the other mayors? Has there been anything as far as being able to share insights or anything?
That's when you asked about what I felt about accomplishments.
Hmm.
What you're talking about now is probably one of my greatest disappointments.
Mm.
We didn't connect. We didn't do enough to connect as black mayors. Now, granted, like I said, I was the only black mayor until Walt came along. I think Walt was the first. And then you have Travis Stovall and I think it was the fellow in Albany.
Mhm.
He came on board, and I think Tim Hall came on about that same time. Now, I had conversations with Tim Hall, and I was involved in a lot of meetings with Walt because we had the Oregon Mayors Association, and we were in meetings together often, but that was mostly for Washington County. So for Washington County, it was really only me and Walt at that time. So, but the Oregon Mayors Association, uh, that tried to pull all the mayors together when Travis Stovall came on, and um, uh, when Denise came on, we didn't connect. And I don't know why that is. Um, and it was very disappointing to me. I, you know, Travis and I never had any conversation. He, being a new mayor, a young mayor, you would think that, and the way I think, and probably the way I would have done it, was reached out and said, hey, Ken, I'm new to this, and I know you've been doing this for a while. Uh, let's get together. And we never did, and I never heard from him. So we have failed ourselves to, in my opinion, to form a coalition where we were working together to understand the things that Black mayors might have to deal with in our specific communities. What have you learned? How can I help? What is it? And it's that's my biggest disappointment. I don't know why that was, and I know that I reached out, and the funny side of the story with Travis is that when Travis first ran, um, and he was elected, I believe, there was an article that was run that basically said that he was the only Black mayor in Oregon at that time, and something along those lines. I had white mayors calling me and upset that that article was written and said, hey, what about Ken? It was something along those lines. And I think there was probably a point where Travis said, well, that wasn't my article. Somebody misspoke, and that wasn't the way it was supposed to be written. But he never reached out to me. So, but I don't, I can't really understand it, and it is disappointing. It's still to this day. Walt and I spent some time together, but we're two little bitty cities, and 370 people there and 5,000 here. But the guys who came in with bigger cities, maybe they just didn't think that the small town guys were of any benefit, which is disappointing in itself. So we never really bonded. And I mean, there was never a bond that was established amongst the Black mayors.
Does sound like a missed opportunity.
It was a missed opportunity. I don't know what it's like now, because there are more now. Like I said, I was there by myself for a few years. Then there were two. And then just as I was retiring, then I think there were five. But I'm hoping that the scenario is today that they are bonding with one another, for Denise and Travis and um, What's the fellow's name in Albany?
Alex Johnson.
Alex Johnson. You know, is that the only ones that are in the seat today?
Yeah, currently, yes, that's three, obviously, because we talked about former Garibaldi Mayor Tim Hall.
Right, right.
So, yeah,
But currently, there are only those three.
yeah.
Okay. So, and maybe they have established some communication and a bond. I know that uh, for Denise, she did mention Travis, but I don't remember whether or not she said anything about Alex. But when I talked to her,
Oh, yeah, she connected uh, me and Alex as well. So,
okay.
yeah, kind of staying in a similar vein.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, really, the points of doing the story, in addition to making sure these experiences are captured,
Mm-hmm.
is trying to provide some insights, uh, yeah, to people who maybe, whether it's running to be, 281 cities in Oregon, I believe. So
Mm-hmm.
if I do my math, that's 272 that still could have their first black mayor. But then there's also, plenty of places where it's like the first city councilor, the first, school board member is still
Yeah.
history waiting to happen. So, is there any advice you would give specifically to whether it's especially young people, but again, you can be any age running for office out here, but people running that could potentially be, whether it's the first black elected or maybe often these places the second.
Right. 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 And, my advice is that to understand why you want to be involved, and it's not just to be the only black person doing it. It's because you really feel you bring something to the table and it's going to make that community better. To me, that's the number one reason that you do this work, because you want to make the community that you're representing better than it was before. If you're the kind of person that says, I see things that need to be fixed, I see things that need to get done, and I'm willing to take my time and get involved in order to push it along, to make some progress. And I'm the person to do it. And young people need to start doing that. You know, I'm, I'm bound and determined to say it this way. I'm too old to be doing this kind of stuff. You know, I believe in age limits. I believe that, the younger generation needs to be involved in this. You say, well, you're only 77 years old. But, when I look from local government all the way up to the presidency of the United States, you look at these state senators and federal, state, Congress, Senate who are dying in office, holding a seat, that we should have younger folks involved is a travesty to me. And I just say that our future depends on the younger population getting involved. You know, your ideas mean something. This whole uh, argument of, well, you have an older person with experience doesn't mean anything to me. You have ideas, you have insight, you have vision as a young person. To me, all that outweighs years of sitting in an office with experience. You gotta step up, you gotta step forward, and you can't be afraid of failing. Give it a try. You never know what's going to happen. You can do some great things, and people will support you. You will get things done, you know, and there's proof of that all the way around, you know. And I think one of the things that we have to say and say it this way. is that for every black person that's reached the level of mayor in Oregon, we've accomplished some things, right? We've accomplished some things. I you're going to find out what Denise has accomplished, what Travis has accomplished, what Alex has accomplished in their tenure. It was a tough road for Tim Hall, but then when you look at some of the others, James Bond, what did they accomplish while they were in there? You know, I didn't really have any opposition. You know, the opposition to the expansion is what the world is today. It wasn't toward me. It is the way people think. I own this land. I don't. It doesn't matter how I got it. I got it from my grandfather who stole it from somebody. It doesn't matter. I own this land and it's mine, and I don't want to see any change. We see that all the time. That wasn't against me. That's just the way of the world right now. But I think that it's just a matter of saying we need a new generation. We need young people who have no fear about whether or not I'm going to be able to do it or not. Put your foot in the door, try to get your foot in the door, and go for it. Because I think good things can happen, but it won't happen if you don't try. You got to get in it, and it's rewarding, and it really is a great thing to do to serve your community.
Or King City Mayor Ken Gibson, thank you so much again for taking the time today. Before I let you go, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I mean, it's um, I love what you're doing, and I appreciate you doing this. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the finished product might look like. You know,
Mm.
so if you have any other questions for me, please don't hesitate to ask via text, email, or whatever the case may be. And I hope that my conversation with you has been of benefit.
Oh, absolutely. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe so we can help grow this channel. And if you want more content, make sure to follow Black Oregon POV on Instagram.